I want to tell you, as you can see, like the sweat dripping down my brow of when we put this stuff together on a moment's notice and are putting in cameras and trying to figure out something, always something goes wrong. So I can tell you that's live cameras and live television, baby.
Welcome to the Real Deal Landman Show podcast. This is where you clap. Thank you very much. We are so happy to be here in Boston at the National Association of Division Order Analysts Conference. Drew Hopkins, you already know, of course. I'm Jerris Johnson, also known as the other guy. Thanks to NADOA for inviting us to be part of their incredible conference and for giving us the space to do this today. We want to give a special shout out to Pack Energy for sponsoring this episode. Traveling and bringing the equipment, it is not an easy task for us to do. Plus, Drew, as you've probably been able to tell already, is much of a diva. And so he has all these special requests and needs, and it just gets really complicated. So we really appreciate the support that the Pack has given us. In addition to their software and services, they also create great content with special guests. You can check all that out on the resources section of packenergy.com. We started this podcast late last year, and we have a fair number of fans and followers. Actually, speaking of which, some of you might know that Drew has an ongoing commitment to fans. So, absolutely. Special thing. Does anybody here like that today?
Like this?
Oh, God. Okay. So normally, so here's two-step process of the story. If you are wearing a Real Deal Landman slap bracelet, like that one, and you come up to me in a conference, I take my wallet out and you get all the money that's in it. It's very exciting. I don't know, number one, if you all have been to Boston before. Exciting, expensive town.
You don't have a wallet?
I've got a wallet, but we are cash light right now. But there is a minimum threshold that you will hit, so you will get $50. I will thank Jerris for bringing that up because I did not remember that. And it's becoming more and more of a front of the mind thing whenever I go to these different conventions. We were downtown at the Oklahoma City Boathouse, and somebody ran up to me at like 6 a.m. as we were setting up and was like, got this, man. That I actually had I was cash heavy that day. So you never know. The minimum that you're going to get is $50, and the maximum, who knows at this point. I'm going to die penniless and it's because of a podcast.
I always have to clarify this and make it very clear. This is Drew's thing. This is not my thing. So remember, if you show me your slap bracelet, you'll get a high five. But if you show it to Drew, then there's some good stuff in store for that. So many thanks to the people who have followed and subscribed to us thus far. Please take a minute, do the same. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, many other sources. If you will, go on there right now, follow. I think if you show us afterwards that you did follow, I think Drew's got a couple more slap bracelets in his pocket and might be able to hook you up the next time you see us. We are thrilled to welcome back to the show our first and probably our most popular guest that we've ever had.
Absolutely.
He's a man who needs no introduction, so I'm not going to waste any time giving one. Ladies and gentlemen, the Larry Coshow.
And thank you, guys.
Hey,
we got to tone it down a little bit. We got to tone it down.
But before anything else, thanks for dressing up for the show today, Larry.
Yeah, baby, I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. Have been since I was about that tall.
It's a good look.
Actually, you know what? I had some things I was going to bring up, but some things that people may not know. Baseball runs deep in your family, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, tell us about how that goes. I just remembered this as he pointed this out.
Yeah, great story. Wife and I were talking about it on the ride back. I've been down at Fenway Park this morning, just hanging out with the people that got a 3-game series with the Pirates. Kind of what you were alluding to. Our youngest son played baseball in high school and went to the University of Oklahoma, played a couple of years there, and then got drafted by the New York Yankees in That was 2013. And, for me, I was happy, we were together, when the draft was going on and we were happy, but in the inside, I'm like, damn, I got to pull for him. And so, he came to New York and they did a big, media thing. And the big thing at the time was a lot of you'll know the name Aaron Judd, that plays for the Yankees. Well, our son Kale and Aaron were in the same draft class. And so both those guys show up in New York, and the media immediately goes, not really on the attack mode, but like, hey, you guys realize this was a baseball draft, right? Because Aaron Judge's like 6'7",
Yeah.
about 260. Well, our son was like 6'5", about 260, 265, and is a big dude. And they were like, yeah, when we get in trouble, we're going to put Aaron and Kale out in front of all our fights. But, one of the media people asked the question, about, was the family, excited, about, that. And he said, well, I hate to say this or bring it up, but, my father is a big, huge Red Sox fan. And so naturally, I was raised to be a Red Sox fan. And then one of the media people asked, well, who do you think your dad's going to root for? And he said, really? He's a Red Sox fan. What do you think he'll cheer for you? And he said, maybe. So,
With baseball being such a big thing, and you've said you've traveled to Boston, I mean, numerous times. This is one of your favorite cities, right?
yes, it is.
So what were some of the things this week that maybe you and your wife did? Did you do anything different that you haven't experienced before, or was it all kind of the same?
It's all kind of the same, about the same kind of stuff.
Besides, this was the first time I had been back to Boston. I don't know about how many people here. Number one, beautiful weather, clean city, like incredibly clean city. Like, I don't know if you guys picked up on that too, and really walkable. Like, we had such fun just kind of walking around. I think it was a perfect place for the NADOA convention.
Have you seen any famous graves?
So I texted Jerris the other night, and we were coming back.
I love telling embarrassing stories about Drew,
and trying to get money out of the pocket too. We were coming back, and we were going by one of the famous graveyards. And, all of the gravestones, the headstones are so old and they're just so beautiful. And as we're going by, there was a huge monument, and you guys probably know which one I'm talking about. Right in the middle of it, there's one, and it says Franklin on it. And my father, I think I've said on the show a few times, my dad was a American and Oklahoma history teacher, really high focus on the American history side. And so he would always be texting me, look for these different things, look for these things. And I was like, oh man, like this is great. He didn't even mention that Benjamin Franklin was buried here. I'm going to take a picture of this and I'm going to send it to him and take a picture of it. And I've even told the Uber driver, please stop for just a second. I've got to get this. And I take a picture and I send it to my dad. And my dad's like, he's buried in Philly. And so I don't. And Jerris was like, there's other people with the last name Frank, right? So. That was the only kind of come down moment of this trip, but we're all learning. History is very difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Enough about us, right?
That's right.
Let's get back to Larry here. Okay, Larry, I'm gonna put you on the spot with something.
All right.
So I want you to fill in the blank on this sentence. For division order analysts who are brand new to the industry or their profession, they need to always.
New to the profession.
Mm-hmm. Brand new. They're just coming into it. What is it? You're giving them advice. They need to always what?
To be looking forward, to look around, become part of a team, get locked into a team. I think before too long, you'll figure out, that person's really smart. That person I really need to go talk to and establish, relationship. Because I think in our entire industry as a whole, be it an analyst, a landman, an engineer, a geologist, we start, new with no experience, but at the same time, how am I going to gain that experience? And, as I reflect back on my life, I mean, I just came in with the attitude that, hey, I'm ready to go. I want to learn. I think you got to have that internal desire and passion, to to learn, ask questions, and it's amazing, when you start asking questions, a lot of people will kind of gravitate towards you, and start sharing information, with you. I think it's so important, to come in with that right attitude of I want to learn, I want to learn this, I want to get better at it every day.
That's awesome. Thank you. So, other end of the spectrum, fill in the blank. For seasoned division order analysts or other land professionals, they don't do enough.
That's a good. I mean, to me, as I look, you know, has some that would answer that question. I think that that they don't want to stop. They want to keep going. They want to continue to do what they've learned to do because why? I'm very good at it. People ask me, well, you retired 3 years ago from BP, but you're working, and I'm like, well, I wasn't ready to stop. And I felt like that, for me, and I think for some of the senior, analysts in the group, we don't want to stop. We want to keep going. We want to keep our minds sharp. And, we just like being around people and or talking to people and sharing our talents and our gifts. And for me, it's about giving back. And I think for a senior analyst, I think, as they look around and examine, hey, I can help that person. There's a young person, maybe I can be a mentor, a teacher, and help them improve and get better.
What do you think whenever you're saying someone that is in like that senior level role, they're closer to retirement, or maybe they have retired, but they still do want to give back. In like these last 3 years, what have been some of the ways that you found to kind of organize your thoughts? Or is it going out and doing things like this, speaking at different conventions? If that might not be your thing, what are some other ways that you can kind of give back to the newer generation?
Well, I think for me, it was about the network. I mean, that's a big thing that I've always, took
Yeah.
pride in, as a landman, and I think, it can certainly carry over into other disciplines as well as being an analyst. Is is having that desire, to want to stay, and but at this time you may have to make some adjustments. I'm not in a leadership role anymore, and I'm okay with that. When I first retired, I set out the required 90 days. I read that fine print, BP puts in front of you to make sure I keep my retirement benefits. And I went to work. A guy stopped me. And he saw my name tag. I'd scratched out BP and I'd put my company name on it. And he said, well, what happened? And I said, well, I retired. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I looked at my watch. I said, I got 20 more days. And then I'll be able to tell you what I'm going to do next. So the next night he came and sits with me and he said, so assume 20 days has passed. What do you want to do? And I said, I just want to be a landman. And for an analyst, for them, I just want to be an analyst. I don't want to be in a leadership role. I don't want to be a team lead. I just want to do something. I just want to work with a team and that team concept and not let the focus be on me as a leader and just be there,
Yeah.
every day. And that's what I do, today, for, 3 years now. That's what I continue to do is just, I work with a bunch of young landmen and at companies and, they look at me and they're like, why do you keep doing this? Because I'm good at it.
Very good.
That's why I'm doing it.
Do you think there is demand and space for more people to take that attitude or that perspective to reach a point and they've said, I've been fortunate in my career for the last 10, 15, 20 years to have been a leader or manager or VP, whatever that is. I don't have to do that anymore. I think I can make an impact by just being, an individual contributor or a person that's part of the team. And I think I can make an impact that way. Do you think there's a demand for more people to do that?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, as I look around, there's people retiring that are getting out of the game. And then there's people, like myself and maybe others here in the audience, that feel the same way. I'm not ready to stop. Now, at first, I think it was hard for that friend of mine that I had that discussion with, um, because he was a CEO, and it was hard for him. Like, you'd be happy doing that? I said, yes, I would. And it was almost like, yeah, okay, Kosho, you're just kind of saying that. No, I really meant it. I mean, I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. If I didn't have fun doing what I'm doing now, I would retire, but I'm having too much fun. I'm getting to do things that I want to do. I get to work for the people that I want to work with. So I think you got a little bit of that flexibility where you can kind of navigate through your networking and come and find out the opportunity that you really want to do, and go do it with passion and enthusiasm. And the young guys that I work with now, they're like, how do you know how to do all this stuff? Well, I've been doing it for 43 years. Well, can you teach me how to do that? A lot of the landman today don't know how to chain title. So I've shown them how to do that. And I said, it's not something you're going to master, with one discussion. It's 43 years worth. Same thing, I think, as an analyst. It's not just something you pick up and just start doing from day one. It's a process.
So in a 43-year career, and so my first experience, and was it your first experience with Larry at Chesapeake?
I knew of him because
Right.
everybody knew the name
Everybody
and who
knew
he
him.
was. We never worked directly together. Actually, my first experience with Larry is I had heard about him at Chesapeake, and and whenever you mention Larry's name, it's like Larry Coshow. Like, in a very reverent tone is how people would talk about him. And so even though I never met him, so I was like somewhat intimidated by what would I do if I ever met Larry Coshow. That was kind of like my attitude or my fear on stuff. And I want to get to this in a little bit, but then I read the book, The Frackers, and saw him mentioned and profiled in the book, The Frackers. And then it was like a whole new experience.
Celebrity status, right?
Yeah. So actually at an event several years ago, I was at a Tulsa or Austin, maybe it was Austin, Landman Association event. And I had spoken there, and I was sitting and I was watching the rest of the classes, and I look over my shoulder and I see sitting next to me, it was Larry Coshow. And I was like, what do I say? I didn't really know how to act or like what I was going to say. And we said hello, and I think I said something like, your name's in the Frackers. That's pretty cool. And he opened up, and it was just an incredible conversation. And that was my first real interaction with him. I don't know if you have any memory of this at all, but yeah, that was, it was really impactful. I mean, obviously it's kind of like a joke we're laughing about a little bit, but he does carry that kind of weight. I mean, there is a reason why when he came on our first episode of the show, we saw like a spike and people were interested and they took it seriously because we had Larry Coshow.
Man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
I thought Jerris was going to say the first time that we met Larry was actually on that first episode. and Larry, I remember, and not to take anything away from Jerris, or to say that he's any sort of a diva, much like myself. But Larry did look over and he was like, is it pronounced Jerris? And without even looking up, Jerris said, it's pronounced, how dare you speak to me? And so, that's kind of the level of co-talent we've got going on here. I remember Larry back in the Chesapeake days. And so your first few years of your career, you're very observant of the leaders that are around in the organization that you're in. I was completely caught off guard by what corporate America was and what oil and gas companies were. Chesapeake Energy was in those 2004 to like 2010 years, just going at such an incredible clip, all the oil and gas companies kind of following that trend, right? But you really noticed whenever we were trying to grow our careers, you noticed the leaders that you wanted to kind of emulate. And you noticed the people that everyone highly respected. They showed compassion, kindness, training to the people that were on their teams. And then they also figured out ways to help mix different departments, not just land, but land admin. Now, you've had, with that 43-year career, you've worked at a lot of different companies and you've had a lot of different like land manager roles and everything. For all of that experience and for seeing groups that had good symmetry together and good connection, what have you found some of the ways that division orders, owner relations, land admin as a whole, what are the tips that you would say to make sure that that is a strong, cohesive unit?
That's a good question. I mentioned yesterday when I talked, um, it was, I think it was like a perfect storm at Chesapeake when they just by how they created it. Everybody was on a team. And when I say a team, maybe you were the Western Oklahoma, team. And so you had landman, you had geologists, you had engineers,
Right.
you had land administration, you had lease analysts, you had accounting, you had everything. That was your team. And then there was three people typically, the engineering, the geology, and land leads led that team. You had your own budget, your own deals, so they did things as a team. But for me, as I shared yesterday, I've seen a change because a lot of the consolidation, the M&A that you talked about, yesterday, um, is now companies are cutting back,
Yep.
cutting budgets, cutting people, to where now you might have had 20 division order analysts. Now you got 8. But did the wells stop? Did the drilling stop? Did the acquisitions and the M&A stop? No. And so it's made it more challenging, I think, for division order analysts today, because that's kind of, there's been a separation. So now you've got these individual groups and organizations now where you got geology, you only got engineers, you only got land, and land administration. It's separate from land. It's not a part of it. And for me, that's something, that I feel a passion, and it's one of the reasons why I came here today, to it, because I'd like to see that come back more.
Mhm.
Because as I see landmen and talk to young landmen now, being in a consulting role, I go to a lot of different places and I see a lot of different organizations, and I see that separation between land and division order, where a lot of landmen today, I mean, some of the people came up and talked to me, hey, I understand what you're saying. I've got a landman that doesn't understand what division orders is, and how it works and how it processes, or even how those calculations are done, or if there's a call that comes into the landman, well, oh, that's not my job.
Mm.
And so I'm going to go flip that to the division order analyst. And, that's where that's what I don't, I'm not saying I don't like it, but it's something that's happened and it's occurred. But, can we bring that back? Can we bring it back some? I think it's going to require, um, maybe a cultural change, some of the organizations, but then yet too, flip that around, a lot of companies have outsourced now their land administration. Why? It's part of the budget cut, trimming costs, because everything today is about cost. And if my costs are up, we're not going to stay in business very long. And so that's where the thing starts, getting chopped. But, can we bring that back around? I think we can. But it's not going to be one person. It's got to be a group to make that change.
That makes sense.
So I brought this up a couple minutes ago. For those who aren't aware, I think it was about 10 years ago, a Wall Street journalist by the name of Gregory Zuckerman, he wrote a book that was called The Frackers. And for the rest of the world, they refer to that time period between roughly 2005 and 2015 as the shale boom. For those of us in the land profession, we see it as the land grab that was happening. This book features 5 CEOs: Aubrey McClendon, Tom Ward, Sharif Suki, Mark Papa, and Mitchell. Yeah. And then Larry. What? So, I mean, gloat on yourself a little bit here. I know you don't like to do that, but why do you think you were included in this book as an instrumental or pioneer figure of the land grab that happened?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was at home and I get this call on my cell phone, and it's not in my contacts. And it's New York, and it was Zuckerman on the other end. And I answered it, and he introduced himself to me and told me, what he was doing. That he'd been interviewing all these 5 gentlemen that you had just mentioned, and he said, I'd like to get your perspective on this, and totally caught me off guard. Well, I kind of went on the defensive or offensive, whatever you want to call it, and say, man, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. You're asking me a bunch of questions. You're telling me you're going to write this book. And I said, I'm not sure how much I can talk and tell you and answer some of your questions just because of the organization that I work with. If you're going to ask me questions about the organization, I can't really talk about that. He said, well, I just want to talk to you about what? And so then he started in talking about, Aubrey and all the different companies, and, they were doing the land grab. Chesapeake was kind of the primary leader, the instigator, of that. Well, Aubrey gave him my name. That's what he told me. That's what he told me. And, and so we started talking, and I was real standoffish. I'm just, kind of real short answers. And he said, hey, I need a little bit more from you. I said, man, I'm still kind of uncertain that, how am I going to come out in this book? What are you going to say? Is it going to be a negative book, or is it going to be a positive book? And I said, because I don't want anything to be negative about the industry that I care a lot about. And you're talking about 5 pioneer guys, and you're telling me you've interviewed them and you want to talk to me. And he said, yeah. So we embarked on about a 30-minute discussion, and, answering the questions. And he really thanked me. He said, that, he's with the New York Times, and I'm like, whoa, is this going in the paper? And, in closing, he said, Larry, you never know, this book could maybe turn into a movie. And, I said, really? And, he said, yeah, you could have you could be in that movie. And I said, no, I'm not going to play me. And he said, well, who would play you? And I said, well, if you ask my wife would say Brad Pitt.
I mean, no, of course.
Yeah. But how prophetic. For me, I'm like, I like Billy Bob Thornton. And lo and behold, fast forward, he played the Landman. I'm like,
you're making this up.
No, I'm not.
Seriously?
I'm serious. I'm serious. Because I loved Thornton back then. Well, I still love him today, but yeah, he's just different. And my wife said, you're not Billy Bob Thornton. I said, well, I'm not Brad Pitt either.
So Larry Coshow is not Billy Bob Thornton, but is Billy Bob Thornton Larry Coshow?
No. No.
Can anybody think of any actor that is like that might fit the bill for Larry? If you've got any, shout it out.
Sam Elliott was a vote.
Sam Elliott would be pretty. I heard Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Did I get it wrong?
No.
I thought that was from the left side. I'm sorry. No. I definitely think iconic. Larry is iconic to the oil and gas. Well, we tried to. Jerris and I talked about. We were like, how do we give homage to this guy that is like a hero of ours? And from I don't know how many years ago. What have we been doing on the cowboy kick? How long has that been going? Like you showing up at the different events with the cowboy hat and the absolutely fantastic like blazers.
Yeah.
Like we're a few years into that now, right?
Yes. I don't know. I guess I get older, I get wiser, I think.
And care less, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Jerris and I we were like, we've got to pay some sort of tribute to this guy. And so I was like, well, I've got to wear like a denim, like one of my cowboy shirts. And if I've got a hat, I'll bring it. And like you brought a Dick Tracy hat, which is a little different. But
It's the closest thing.
It's close. No, and no fault. But I will say after corporate life, Larry is living his best, like showing up to the different conferences. You always know where Larry's at
Yeah.
in the conference, and I absolutely love to see it.
Well, I mean, how he got started. I mean, I used to wear real goofy hats, and I
Case
had
in
short
point.
hair, and darker hair, and I don't know. On my 59th birthday, man, my family was giving me a hard time. Oh man, you're gonna be over the hill in one more year, and especially my boys, hair's getting thin, starting to get a little lighter. It's not darker anymore. That kind of stuff. You can't go like you used to go, and so I said, I'm gonna go a year and not cut my hair. And they're like, no way, Dad. You've always had short hair. No way. I went the whole year, and about August when I started in January, and then in August we went to the first ball game, and I put it in a ponytail. I had it by that time it was in a ponytail, and my oldest son looked at me he's like, "Really? You're gonna wear a ponytail out in public?" Yeah, I'm gonna do it. And so then about that time I started moving. I got into that cowboy. I don't do boots. I don't do buckles. I don't do, button, pearl button, shirts. And but I love cowboy hats. And so
It fits you well.
I started wearing cowboy hat. And so now I've got like 4 of them, different colors and different styles and that. And I just enjoy doing it. Now the jackets, that came along about 2 years ago. And, as you get older, don't you get colder? I started getting cold. So I wear jackets all the time. And will, especially when I go to church now, you'll see me in I'll have tennis shoes on and shorts and a golf shirt, my cowboy hat, and a jacket. And some of the people will be like, oh, that's a nice look, Kosho. Nice look.
I do want to see Sam Elliott rocking that same thing. If we're going to do a casting call,
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty solid. Now, the look of Larry Koshow, and what do you think Aubrey would have said walking around if you were in your 3-piece suit back in the day and you were pulling that hair back in a ponytail? Do you think there would have been a side conversation at some point?
Yeah.
Probably so.
Yeah. When I was at BP, Dave Lawler was the CEO, and he and I were friends before, BP, and I came to work there, and I started letting my hair grow out, and they'd see me, I'd go to Denver or to Houston, and he said, "Hey man, I like the hair," and he said, "Because if I could grow hair like that, I would." So he always kept cheering me on to do it.
The other night when we all showed up kind of about the same time, we were out here and we were talking and catching up a little bit. And you shared with us a story that someone had shared with you, and you sent us that little synopsis and looked at it. But the title of it was called, and this takes a minute to kind of think about it and digest it in your head, right? The title of it is called "Can't, Never, Could Do Anything." So I'll repeat that because it's kind of a little mental twister there. Can't, never, could do anything. And you were telling us about how and why that resonates with you.
Yeah.
And why was that, when somebody sent that and shared that with you, why was that so impactful for you?
Well, especially, for me, when I got it, and given the circumstances and the situation and the timing of it, could not have been any better, for me to get that, because, I've always, lived, my life as a can and not as a can't. If a coach, and when I was growing up in sports, told me I can't do this, I can't do that. Hey, I'm going to show you that I can, and I got into high school, and came out of high school, and I was kind of classified as an undersized lineman. Yeah. And then, I was set to go to Air Force Academy. And then, my dream school came and offered me an opportunity to come play football for them at OU. But in the conversation and the visit with the coach, they referred to me as someone that was undersized, wasn't sure that I could play. And then, another coach said, I know you can play because I've seen you play. And undersized don't mean anything to me. So in my entire life, I've kind of dealt with that can't deal. And then, the timing of receiving that um, happened at a good time for me because um, about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago now, um, I noticed I had some hearing loss in my left ear. And, I've been swimming, been in the lake, been in the pool, thought I had some water in my ear, couldn't get it to go away. Felt like I was just stopped up. Go see my friend that's an ENT doctor, do a hearing loss test. And yeah, Larry, you got some hearing loss. And um, on the way out of his office, he said, "Hey, Larry, I'm going to order a MRI. I want you guys to do I just checking the boxes, just making sure there's nothing going on there." Well, long story short, I go back to next week and they discovered that I've got a brain tumor and, set about the size of a golf ball right behind my ear. That was the reason for the hearing loss. Well, then they start talking to me about symptoms. Are you having this? Are you having that? My wife and I, over the last couple of weeks, have been really um, through the ringer, going back and forth, meeting with neurosurgeons. I'm going to have surgery, next Thursday. And, there's me receiving that from the individual that I received it from was so meaningful because this guy just came into my life about 2.5 weeks ago, reached out and said, "Hey, I need your help." And he's an operator drilling well in Permian, Texas. He said, "I understand you've got a pretty good network of people in Houston and Oklahoma City and Tulsa and Midland." And he said, "I just lost a 30% partner in my well. And um, I need to find somebody to step in." Be happy to. Never met the guy. Talked to him on the phone, been on a few Teams call, but never met him. And then, I've been working with him and knock on wood, we were able to get that 30% back. Now, I felt like I didn't do everything I did, but to him, I did. That I helped him. He said, "Dude, you didn't even know me, and you did that." And I made a comment. I'm just like, I try to be a can guy, and not a can't. And you were probably being faced with, we can't do this because we got a rig moving on in 2 weeks. He said, "That's all I heard." So then last week, um, I told him about my situation, with surgery, and it's going to be an 8 week or at least an 8 week recovery period. And I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but you just need to know what's going to happen. And he sent me that article I shared with you guys, and it moved me so much, because I told him, what was going down, and he just he was flabbergasted. And we get to talking, and he said, "I heard you played football at OU," and I said, "Yes, I did." He said, "Well, I played at Texas Tech." And so we had something in common. And he shared with me the person that shared that with him just a few months ago, because he himself was going through not something similar, but it was a medical, issue. And he said, a man totally, I didn't know, shared that with me, and it moved me. And he said, "The minute you told me your story and you used the word, can't, you know, this is not going to stop me. It's because we're gonna push through this." And it resonated with him. Just the and it's a great piece.
Yeah. That's why we wanted to put that on that slide up there of when we were talking to Larry and he said, "Tell me I can't, I'll show you I can." And it's going to be, it sounds like, so the good news with this is we know that not cancerous,
Correct.
correct, but invasive. This is going to
Very.
be very invasive, and this is going to be You said between 12 and 17-hour surgery.
12 to 14
12 to
was what
14
they
hours.
telling me.
Larry did say whenever he was sharing this with us, he said, the first thing I want to see whenever I come out of the amnesia is the Real Deal Landman podcast. I was, as you can imagine, incredibly moved.
Yeah.
I offered to the skills that I have. I've never been a doctor, but I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. And so I said, I can probably cut that down to a 9-hour surgery if you let me. We're still in negotiations on
Well,
that, right?
you all told me like, hey, we're going to be there.
Oh,
We're going to be there. And the first faces you see when you come out, it's going to be the real deal guys.
it's going to be Jerris and I wearing really long white beards, and we're like, you've been unconscious for the last 4 years.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
He's gonna have his medical bracelet. Next to it will be his #1 fan flat bracelet.
Yeah.
That's right. And
We-
also,
How did this get on my arm? Well,
again-
you were under, and so we put it on.
the first thing he hears is, I'm like, Larry, I still don't have any money in my
Yes.
I'm very sorry. We wanted to hit on that, and because number one, we all talk about, everybody in here's heard this, the oil and gas. We're a small knit, tight knit family. We're a big family. The people that we have worked with in the past have meant so much to us, and they continue to mean so much to us. For Larry to come out a week before he goes to a surgery, like that brought me to a real, that was a really big moment for me, where I was just like, his commitment to do this and to see everyone in this room is huge. And his commitment to do something like that, something as silly as this show, is huge. And that is why we appreciate him so incredibly much. And I know I speak for myself and anyone in here, during that recovery process, we want to be there for anything you need, obviously.
Thank you.
Anything you need. Do you, when you looked at this, one of the things that the only question that I really had is, when you get a diagnosis like this, and I think everyone again in the audience, everybody's been affected by something, hey, we're 1 degree of separation from either, a cancer or something that has really been a profound part of life. When you get this, what priorities immediately shift for you? Oh, wow.
Wow, that's a great question. I think for me, to hear that, that word, you've got a tumor, that was a gut punch. It was totally out of, left field. Wasn't what I expected or family had expected. But then, I'd be lying if I say, for the next couple of nights, I felt like I didn't go to sleep, because I started reflecting on the things that had occurred in my life. And, I looked at my age. I'm like, well, hey, I'm not ready to check this in or check out. And so, just for me, the first 2 days was tough. And I didn't say anything to my wife, didn't say anything to my kids. I had a couple of meetings with the doctors and, talking about, the next steps. And that was eye opening. I'm like, okay, I probably need to talk to my family about this. And so I did. And it just kind of, it has gone from there. After the first couple of days, I don't know, I felt this peace, because I was starting to get a lot of encouragement. And I can't say enough. I had somebody, tell me, hey, Koshow, I heard what you're dealing with, what you're going through. And, I really don't have any words to say. And I said, that's okay. I said, man, I've been on that same side as you. Find out somebody's going through a situation. I don't have any words to say. And I told him, I said, everything that you just did right now spoke to me. You took the time to call me. You took the time to drop a note to me or send me a text and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. And to me, that brought comfort and brought a little bit of peace. Some people ask me, are you worried? And I'm a man of faith, and I just said, no, I'm not. And why? And I said, because of God. I win either side of the coin. I win. And, for some people, they have a hard time understanding that. And then some people do understand it. And then, I've had, other people, I've always got to put a Koshow thing on something. And I said, that I think the reason why that, he's not through with me yet is because he just gave me another chapter to my book. And they're like, what? And I said, I feel like I've got another chapter to my book. I've got an obstacle, got a roadblock in front of me. And, I'm in the process of actually writing a book, and putting the chapters together is kind of where you start. What do you want to cover in your book? And, I walked away, that day, just, I'm like, okay, so God, you want me to do another chapter, right? You want me to put another chapter in my book. And I think that's what, that's what I'm living off of, and putting my faith and belief in that.
So you're writing your book. Of course, Sam Elliott will play you in that movie, right?
That's a name I might need to put when Hollywood starts calling.
At the very beginning, I asked you to fill in the blank, the division order analysts who are brand new to the industry and their profession, they need to always do this. And we talked about things that help them in their career, professionalism, etc. All great answers. With these other life events now in perspective, what would you add to that list? Young person, for example, coming into their career, what do they always need to do?
Man, I wish I would have done this, when I was young. Is, we talk a lot. You see a lot written today about work-life balance, and I think that's a great that's a great goal. It was my goal and ambition at the same time. That, man, when you're young and you're kind of moving up that chain, that ladder, and you're having some successes, sometimes you kind of you let maybe that the ego and the the stature, and the benefits, as you advance up the ladder, man, I really like this is cool. I really like this. This is good. But then yet, you've got a family, and yet, I felt like, as a younger, landman, that, there was sometimes that, you know, I put a lot of emphasis into my work. I put a lot of or a lot of emphasis and work in with my team, because I really, really am a strong believer in the team concept, and being a family and being a group. So I had two families. I had a work family, and I got a family. And man, it's sometimes as you're climbing up the ladder, you sometimes forget and put one on the burner. And for me, I think sometimes there was times that I I sacrificed my work, and put it in place of my family. And I think the thing now for me is, as I flip that around, especially, as we've gone through life and we face these roadblocks, it becomes more real.
Yeah.
And this, these last 3 or 4 weeks has become real, for me, of how important life really is, and who's important to us. Can I still work and be passionate about my work and work with a team? Yeah, I can. But when I was young, I didn't really think that way. But now I see it, because I lived through it, and went through it. And I'm like, hey, everybody turned out good on the teams that I worked with. We had a lot of success. We did a lot of great things. And I've been truly blessed with my family, my wife, and my kids, and extended family, and got grandkids now. They keep us going. And so I you know, I don't think we ever stop maturing. As we grow older, we try to become a little bit smarter, a little wiser, and like, I really don't need to be doing that. I need to focus on this.
Before we officially wrap this up and hit the stop button, do you have anything you want to add or close out with?
I don't have any more questions for Larry. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Like that's what really makes this special of being able to talk with everybody and be able to share stories like that. We've gone through a lot. We said thank you to the sponsors, our normal sponsors that we have, Novus Consulting, Roland AI, Scramble, and Anchored Innovations.
What is Anchored Innovations?
And I actually got an email from Anchored Innovations. Every time on the podcast, I always say, I don't know what the hell Anchored Innovations is.
I don't either.
And nobody really does. But I got a very angry email from them. And they said, if you are spending time in Boston, we still won't tell you what we are. I hate whenever it's like, let's call on somebody. But I feel like we can do this here. We're ending the conference. This is like the last session. You all have been in Boston for a few days now, right? Has anyone picked up on the Boston accent? Okay.
Boston Gardens.
Okay.
Boston.
So Anchored Innovations said, I need someone to say the following phrase. And it is, I parked the car at the harbor. In your best Boston accents. Now, if you do this, Anchored Innovations will buy, if you are a bourbon drinker, they will buy you a very special bourbon. And I will make sure that you get it. If you are not a bourbon drinker and you would like any sort of, if you imbibe in nice wines or anything like that, I would be happy. But we are all going to decide, we're going to pick 3 people. So if you want to give this a shot, put your hand up. Okay, we've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3. I see 3. Let's do 4. Let's do 4. Come on, could you come up here real quick? And I just want to stress, yes, this is your plan along, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so the phrase again, and we will do audience is going to give us we'll judge this accordingly here. Let me turn the camera around so we document this for all time. For all time. Okay. So I parked the car at the harbor, but in Boston town. And this is I want to make sure this is no, because mine is fantastic. I'll do it at the end of this. Okay, I'm giving both of these. So, okay, number 1.
I parked the car at the harbor.
That's pretty good.
Oh,
That's pretty
yeah.
good. Okay, number 2.
I parked the car at the harbor.
Nice.
Nice.
Very good. Very good.
I parked the car at the harbor.
Oh, yeah.
Am I good?
I parked the car at the harbor.
That sounded really equal. It sounded really equal. I think Anchored might be out 4 bottles.
Maybe out 4 bottles. You know what? We can do 4 bottles. Let's do this. We can definitely do it.
So again, thank you to for NADOA for having us here. Again, thanks to Pack Energy for their sponsorship and their support of this episode. Remember to check out their site and services in the resources section. You will find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, other sources. Subscribe. Let us know what you think. And again, from Drew Hopkins, Jerris Johnson, and of course, the great Larry Coshow, thank you so much for joining us today.